We are your hosts, Nick Smith.
And Kylie Jo Smith. And today's episode is called Black Women Don't Count.
We are talking about the myth of racial equality in feminism. Now, before you get all upset, I probably should have said trigger warning before we started this. That should have been the intro. Hey, y'all, trigger warning. But before we get into the conversation, we first want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters. Thank you, those who are helping us and supporting us on our journey. You're about to see some changes. Our audio is about to be upgraded on the video.
It's going to be awesome.
So you won't hear as much room noise. Our set's going to change a little bit, and it's all thanks to our Patreon supporters. So thank you guys for loving and supporting us.
Thank you guys.
We also want to give.
It's just me
today.
Go ahead.
Apparently.
We also want to shout out to Sankofa Club. I actually don't have my shirt on today. What's wrong with me?
It's okay.
Sankofa Club, if you don't know what it is a digital resource box that you can get straight to your inbox. It has activities for your kids. It has all age groups. It has different subjects. We're ready to download and print off our next month of activities. And we'll actually have some video clips of our kids. I have one where they're reading the activity from last month, and it's super awesome. And if you sign up right now, there's a promotion going on. So go ahead.
For the rest of the month, which you got like a week.
Yeah, you could totally sign up.
A whole week. Come on, man.
So
get on it.
Sankofa Club.
Sankofa Club.
He's got it. So,
Also, we got new merch coming soon. Starting March 1st. We are going to have pre-orders. So go to our website, www.nicksmithpodcast.com, and we are going to start pre-ordering T-shirts. We've got our Be Blessed T-shirt and the Make America Kind hat.
Yeah, it's like one of a kind.
There's more than one.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Actually, no, we'll just do one. Whoever bids the highest gets. I'm just kidding.
Wow. But yes, it's going to be an awesome hat. It's going to be embroidered. It's going to be in the same vein as the hats you've seen during this current administration that say Make America Great Again.
Yeah.
We decided that something better than that would be to make America kind.
Yes. And so you can rock that hat all election season.
Yeah.
And if you have an event, a venue, a place, a meeting, something where you need some vocals, I am now singing for... No, I'm just kidding.
That's news.
Kylie Jo is booking for a summer tour. So
yes.
We have dates filling up, and it's really exciting.
Yeah.
So jump on in there before... they are all filled up. And then our last little bit of business before we get to our topic is I want to thank Sean, Mr. Is Real, Mr. 316 himself for coming through last week.
He's my favorite rapper.
He's made you his favorite rapper.
He made himself my favorite rapper.
No, now you're his favorite. No, I'm just kidding.
I am?
No, not at all.
I'm not even good.
I doubt you're even on the list. You're not even your own favorite rapper. So I'm just being real life.
True.
No myth. And then also thanks to Pierre who came through the week before. We had some awesome guests, and we hope to be doing more in the future.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen the video from our last episode, we have now over 5,000 views on that.
Which blew my brain.
What?
Man, that's awesome. Thank you guys for watching. And if you have not seen stuff on YouTube, we got to keep up on our YouTube now because now people know we
feel
exist.
Like there's like a need for it.
There's like a pressure. Awesome. So we are going to jump into today's topic, which is Black Women Don't Count. But before we get too far into that, I've got to give some disclaimers.
Because you're a man. You're not a Black woman.
Exactly. And this is going to come off, just so you know, I'm going to do as little talking as possible so that I don't come off as bashing anyone. We all know that's not true. I talk a lot. But as a man, I feel like there are times where I can't speak in the realm of feminism or any of that because I feel like my legs are taken from me immediately when they say, well, you're a man, what do you know? And I get the hostility. I'm not trying to fight for patriarchy here. But I just want to give the disclaimer. Yes, I am a man. I am not a Black woman. But I do come from biracial background. Kylie Jo, biracial, actually the opposite. So my mom...
I'm more Black than Nick.
You stop it. My mom is Black and Italian. My dad is white and Native.
Yeah.
And so Kylie Jo's mom is white and her dad is Black.
So I was raised by mostly white women.
Yeah. And I was raised mostly by Black women. And, you know, my dad was around, but mom was definitely the head honcho in the house. Like mom ruled the roost. And so I was raised a feminist by all classical senses.
Yeah.
When we got married, we had to navigate that where I was like, we both can do lawn care. Like, why do I have to Why am I the only one that has to take out the trash?
Yeah, it was weird realizing like I actually grew up with a little bit less feminism than my husband.
Yeah,
I didn't realize it.
It was equality in the house. My mom was like, listen, men cook and women cook. Men do laundry and women do laundry.
Yeah.
And so growing up in that, I am by the classical sense of men and women being equal.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I mean, actually, I almost minored in women's studies at Wichita State.
I did know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's up, Wichita State? Another shout out. If you guys want to partner with us, send us a check or maybe forgive some of these loans. We'll keep shouting you out. Awesome. All right, so let's jump into it. Kylie Jo.
Okay. So, all right.
Unpopular opinion.
This whole episode is going to be full of that. I just want to throw that out there. I am a Black woman, so I feel that I have the authority to speak on these things.
There we go.
But also, having grown up in predominantly white culture, I was miseducated on this.
Yeah.
I was miseducated generally.
Not like Lauryn Hill, though.
Man, that's a good album. But shout out to Lauryn Hill. But at the same time,
because she's listening, friend of the podcast.
At the same time, like grew up with a misunderstanding of race and racism in America. But that also translated into what I understood about feminism.
Yeah.
And kind of the pro-woman movement. So there's this concept that I came across when I was researching feminism, because I did have to research this, and I have been researching it for years to try and understand how does feminism fit into Christianity.
Yeah.
Because it's not written in the text of scripture. Like there's not this like chapter on feminism.
But it kind of is.
It is, but it's been read into so much
Yes.
that the interpretation has clouded my understanding of what
Good
Jesus
call.
actually meant.
Good call, yeah.
And so I had to go to the word myself. I had to research this. I had to look at things that were uncomfortable to look at and hard to grapple with. But there is this concept that I came across called intersectional feminism.
Okay. Explain that to me a little bit.
It's basically it's another categorizing of feminism. So I didn't realize there's all these different ways of understanding feminism.
Yeah.
I thought it was just one thing. I was like, oh my gosh, I thought it's not a monolith. Okay. So, intersectional feminism includes the understanding and the perspectives of different races and gender identities.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of separate from what we might identify as white feminism. So white feminism became a trending topic and a kind of a way of breaking down feminism. And a lot of, I would say almost Black nationalist views were down on feminism because it is a white construct.
I got you.
I always rejected that because I was like, oh my gosh, that's so harsh. Like feminism is awesome.
Yeah, you got to help women out. Help
right. Women are great. We like give birth and stuff.
All that stuff.
But then I started to look at the history of feminism in this country, and I realized that it is predominantly an Anglo construct, a colonial mindset. Okay. And so intersectional feminism, as I was researching it, I realized this actually moves Black women down on the list even more.
Okay, how so?
Because, so this idea of like transgenderism,
which we're going to get canceled right away.
We're not going to talk about that specifically.
People are going to be like, you said something bad about trans.
I said something about trans.
Shut
I said the word
down.
trans, and I didn't say it in the way that you thought I should.
No,
but I want you to understand from a Black woman's perspective.
Okay.
And I think I asked you this one day. I was like, explain this to me. We live in a culture that says being a woman is so much more than my breasts. It's so much more than my sexual organs.
Yeah.
It is beyond what I feel, because a lot of times women are viewed as emotional and irrational, and we're given this bad rap because we're all into our feelings. If my being a woman is more than my breasts and my body parts and my feelings, why is it that all a person has to do to become a woman and to be classified and qualified as a woman is to put on a dress and wear makeup and say that they feel like a woman?
And you know what? I can't answer that.
You can't answer that, but I can tell you as a Black woman, that is incredibly demeaning to my identity, because what you're saying to me is you're so much more than all these things, but yet all someone has to do to be like you, all they have to do is to put on something that looks like those things you have.
Yeah. And not to take racism and sexism, because a lot of times they're paralleled.
Yeah,
and not to say they are the same struggle, because as we're going to dive into, they're different. But I'm trying to put that into my context as a man. So as a man, trans men don't affect me, because living my life as a man, I haven't had to deal with oppression of being a man. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so when
would you say you have a privilege?
Yes, there would definitely be some male privilege that I have. And so when there is a trans man, a biological woman who is living her life as a man, that doesn't affect me. I don't feel that my experience has been degraded. However, when I can't remember the gal's name, but the white woman that had the NAACP, remember when that came out?
Yes, who like was tan and curled her hair and all that.
Yeah. But when she came out, or when she like entered the scene and was all of a sudden saying like she's black, I was like, no, you can't just paint your skin and say you're black now.
Right.
Like, so for me, understanding it, I have to take it to the racial context and be like, okay, you don't get to claim, because you can't jump in the middle and be like, yeah, us. That's like, so growing up in the streets here, I'm going to hip you to a little bit of the game real quick.
You're going to what?
Hip you to a little bit of the game.
Educate me a little bit about the situation?
So there was this phrase called set busting. And actually, if you listen to old Richard Pryor comedy, he talked about he never wanted to be in a gang because he couldn't fight. So any side that was winning, that's my side.
Same.
He said, and so there's this concept of like, oh, you guys are ahead? Now I'm with you. And so if I'm looking at it from that context, it's like, wait a second, you're jumping on ship now. Where were you back when all this oppression was? So sorry, I didn't mean to take away from your
no,
thing.
you're
I'm
good.
just trying to put it into an understanding for the men's that are listening out there.
Right. So for this intersectional feminism concept, what happens is that trans women are now considered equal with black women. And as a black woman, as I said, that is demeaning. It does cheapen the understanding of what being a woman is.
Yeah.
Again, because it's not just a putting on of something. It really isn't just a feeling.
Yeah.
It's not just one of them days that a girl goes
Shout
through.
out to Monica, right? We're just shouting out everybody. Shout out Monica. What's up?
It's so much deeper than that. But to be told that on one hand, and then to have it demonstrated over and over again and touted in the culture and celebrated. Essentially, if you want to hear it from my perspective as a black woman, what I'm seeing is a biological male being told that he is equal with a woman only because he's now become a woman. Yeah. Only because now he feels this type of way. Yeah. Whereas black women, we felt this type of way for a long time. We were born feeling this type of way. Yeah. And yet we have not been celebrated to the same extent. That is not equality. Yeah. It is a juxtaposition, or whatever you want to call it, of feminism that creates a paradox. Yeah. That makes it hard to argue for.
Yeah. And looking at feminism from that standpoint of an all-inclusive, that is a very new movement.
Yes.
So even this understanding of intersectionality, when I was taking my women's studies classes way back in the day, that was never even a topic even at that point.
Yeah.
We did talk about black feminism. We talked about white feminism. We talked about Marxist feminism. We talked about militant feminism. We talked about all the different ways feminism could manifest itself. But going back, this all-inclusive, unifying, we're all women, so let's all stand together. That's a very new construct.
Yeah.
As far as historically, you know what I'm saying? Going back, and again, y'all, this is a dude talking, but I'm just speaking from my understanding of life.
Yeah.
The feminist movement was not as a movement. Now, there were individual feminists that were abolitionists as well. But as a movement, the feminist movement did not care about black women.
No.
At the onset.
Right.
At the onset.
Right. So you had a lot of meetings that were happening. And the biggest part of feminism that we tend to look at as kind of almost like the flagship in America is suffrage. And I'm not talking about suffering. We're talking about for those of you that don't know what suffrage is, it's the right to vote.
Not to be confused with the Man show that was on in the 90s. They tried to end women's suffrage, and they had women sign this petition.
And
it was
people
a terrible
really got
show.
offended.
No one should ever watch this.
Don't watch this
But
show.
that skit was actually pretty funny.
Yeah. So women's suffrage, we have Elizabeth Cady Stanton and all these really great historical figures that we look to. We actually teach our young girls in schools about how amazing these women were. And no doubt,
Susan B. Anthony.
They contributed amazing things to our history. But what we don't talk about a lot is the removal from the black woman from those meetings and those arrangements. So black women actually were already meeting. There were black women that met together and were like, let's do this thing. Yeah. Because segregation was a thing that had always been. And when black women actually asked to be a part of those meetings, there are writings, you can fact check me. There are writings from these women who were leading these movements that excluded black women.
Wow.
They did not want black women to be a part of it. They didn't see it as a cause to fight for.
Yeah.
Because they were fighting for their right to vote.
Yeah.
And while it's uncomfortable to accept that,
Mm-hmm.
that women's suffrage was a white dominated movement,
Mm-hmm.
that is the truth of it.
Yeah.
And actually, what happened was, for those of you that don't know, in history, black men had to get the right to vote. Black
Yeah.
men were not allowed to.
Yeah.
And even after that amendment was passed, well, let's back up. Before that amendment was passed, white women actually petitioned against it. There was a quote at some point. One of the leaders of the women's suffrage movements said something about we must have the vote before the Negro man.
Yeah.
Now,
I've heard that quote. I can't remember who
looking
said
at
it.
that, you can't tell me that women's suffrage, or excuse me, women's like feminism was always about equality. It wasn't always about that.
Well, and so one thing that I've had to deal with is this idea of patriarchy, right? And as a man, I get lumped in to this idea of patriarchy, where I do understand my male privilege,
Right?
and I'm not trying to exclude myself from that. I'm not saying there weren't things that were easier for me as a man, because my whole life has been easier because of being a man. But the common thread has been white patriarchy.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of ethnic American homes, there's a lot more egalitarianism.
Yes.
And so when you're looking at, like you said, going back even before the vote between white women and black men, who would get the vote first, this idea of the family, it looked different for white America and for black America.
Right.
So like the white woman was under her husband's thumb.
Right.
The black man was under every white person's thumb, and the black woman was subservient even beyond that.
Right.
And so there was this crazy hierarchy that now patriarchy is any man is the oppressor. When really, as we talked about with Pierre, it's always been wealthy white men have set in the U.S.
Right.
In the U.S. have set the standards. And that's not to say if you're a wealthy white man, you're listening to this, we're not saying you're a bad guy, but we're saying historically, those in power have been wealthy white men.
Yes. And we see that, like, even just backing up quite a bit. When the slave trade was brought to America, when we started bringing people over, we saw an establishment of family and culture that was placed on Africans.
Yeah.
The understanding of how the traditional American family breaks down was not how the African family operated for centuries.
Well, and even between tribes, and even between,
right.
What they would consider races, you know what I mean? Like different countries and ethnic backgrounds in Africa. There's tribes in Africa that have existed for as long as we can trace, where women are chiefs and women are leaders.
Yeah.
And women are hunters and warriors.
Yeah.
And I mean, ethnic idea of masculinity and femininity was not patriarchal in every situation. Now, I'm sure there were, because you look now and there's tribes that have been doing genital mutilation for years.
True.
So there are tribes where that patriarchy is present, but bringing it to America, there was a lot more egalitarianism.
Yeah. And because you have an understanding of woman, life giver, man, life protector.
Yeah.
And so it's is it symbiotic or synergistic relationship? And so that was then taken and placed in a foreign place, and then these constructs were put over it. And so looking at all, like, fast forwarding, we're jumping around a lot, but when
it's good conversation, that's what you do.
Right. When black men were given the vote, white women had petitioned against it, yet it still happened.
Yeah.
Then there were laws put in place. Different states made it so that black men still couldn't vote, or they would get put in jail if they tried to vote, all these different things. And then we have the beginning of over-policing or over-incarcerating men of color, which started back then. And then you actually have black women's groups growing. And because then they're petitioning not just for themselves, but also for black men, because we were together in this. We were enslaved together. We were segregated together. We were treated poorly. We were lynched at the same time. And so black women start growing in their meetings. And then the women's suffrage movement saw a need to include the black woman. Once the black men got the vote, Then Black women began to be included, but still did not have an equal voice.
Yeah.
And so it's only after seeing it as advantageous to the numerical growth of a movement that white women began to include Black women.
Yeah. And so looking at that from like, not strategic, that's the word I'm looking for. So how much sense does it make for the feminist movement if you have a solid base of African Americans that are men and women that are working together for a common goal? But you know what? The white women don't have the vote, even though we still have more rights than the men who are voting. We just don't have the right to vote, but just the right to exist in a society without harm. We still have more rights.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it make more sense if I can divide their power base and utilize some of their power base for my movement? That just makes sense strategically.
Yeah, it's a very smart, I would say, business move.
Yeah.
It's a very smart political move. And
wow, that's
actually,
interesting.
Frederick Douglass brought up the same thing you just mentioned. I think I have the quote pulled up here. Where is it? He said, this was really cool. So Frederick Douglass,
Freddie D.
abolitionist, he actually was working with women suffragists.
Yeah.
Suffragists? Is that the right word?
I like it. Suffragists.
Women suffering. He was he was working with
women's
them.
rights activists.
And a lot of them still demonized him. He was like called Black Sambo and all these different things. But he was like, I'm still working for the cause.
Yeah.
And he said, when women, because they are women, are hunted down through the cities of New York and New Orleans, when they are dragged from their houses and hung upon lampposts, when their children are torn from their arms and their brains dashed out upon the pavement, when they are objects of insult and outrage at every turn, when they are in danger of having their homes burnt down over their heads, when their children are not allowed to enter schools, then they will have an urgency to obtain the ballot equal to our own.
And so what he's talking about in there, that's an awesome quote. Because what he's talking about is, yes, women have a valid argument for wanting the vote.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to fight for your right to vote.
Yeah.
But
it's not equal.
Yeah, and the urgent need isn't there, because I don't remember who said it. There was a video I remember we watched. And this young woman, what she was saying was that at the end of the day, generally speaking, a white woman is going to go home to her white husband.
Right.
After she's gone out and marched for her rights, she's going to go home and raise her children, and they're going to have all these advantages that the Black woman who may have come to the meeting, may not have, she's never going to have those same exact rights. And so it's interesting that the analogous, or the analogy is drawn like, well, because of my sex, my biological sex, I'm being discriminated against. It's like, yes, you may be, but not at the same intensity. You're not playing at the same stakes.
No, because from the very beginning, we were knocked down a few rungs.
Yeah, because Black people, Black men and women, were not considered human.
Exactly.
We weren't considered like human beings.
Right. Like legally.
Yeah. And so like Black people had to fight to become human first. And then after that, women could fight for the right to vote. But it ended up turning into this idea of like, well, you're a woman, you should be with me. And it's like, wait, you didn't even think I was a human 15 years ago.
Right.
But now all of a sudden I'm a woman, I should be with you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. So one of the things I wanted to bring up, because again, we've been jumping around, but going back to the roots of The Roots, that's a great movie.
Is it?
It's a impactful movie. How about
there
that?
We go. Yeah.
Not so much
deep.
entertaining. Like I want to eat popcorn. Like, oh yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But there's been a systemic removal of Black men from families.
Yes.
There's
talk
been
about this.
There's been a systemic attack, and please hear me. I come from a mixed background. My dad is white, so like I'm not like anti any race, but just looking at how things have been done in this country. There was a systemic, and continues to be a systemic, removal of Black father figures. So going way back to slavery, men and women were raped. We talk a lot about the plantation owners raping women, right?
Yeah.
That's talked a lot about, and it should be acknowledged.
Absolutely.
But there was a thing called buck breaking. Have you ever heard this?
Yep.
So if you've never heard of this, what slave owners would do is they would take, not all slave owners, but this was a common practice. They would take an unruly or a big, strong slave, and they would lay him bare naked in front of his children, in front of all the women, in front of everyone else. And the men who owned him would rape him in front of everyone.
Yeah.
And what that did was that damaged the image of black man as protector. And so no longer could the women look to the black man for support.
Yeah.
And then when the black women would be raped and their husbands would be forced to watch, or their husbands would be killed.
Yeah, and they couldn't protect them.
They couldn't protect them. So then that started to drive a wedge. And then what ended up happening is when they had a family unit on a slave or on a plantation, they would a lot of times sell the husband, sell the man, because they didn't honor, again, they didn't think we were human.
Yeah.
And so then you had women raising little boys and trying to teach them to become men, but afraid that if they're too much of a man, they're going to die.
Yeah. And so then you have, just a side note, you have the beginning of the effeminization of the black man.
Exactly.
Which then has continued in generations.
Yeah, which is a whole,
like,
that's
it's a whole other
thing.
topic. But that began
Yes.
with the removal of the black male as the protector of the family.
Exactly. And so, there's this letter called the Willie Lynch letter. If you've never read it, it talks about how to control black people. And it's things that we're still fighting to this day.
Yeah.
But,
and actually, sorry, side note, Harriet Tubman, who, if you don't know who that is, I'm sorry.
Go watch the movie Harriet. I hear it's awesome.
Yeah. Did we have a friend in that? No. Okay. Sorry. Side note.
Different movie.
Okay. So Harriet Tubman was given a husband. This happened a lot. Slaves would be forced to marry each other or be forced
basically
to
to breed.
Yeah, to breed each other. She had a husband. When she was ready to be free, Harriet was like, "I'm done with this. I'm out."
Peacing out.
The husband she was given, the black male who, yes, should be protecting her and be one with her, didn't want to go with her because he was afraid.
Yeah.
And so then you have another instance of the black woman having to go literally on her own way by herself to be free.
Yeah.
Because she was not given, she was forced into a marriage, but she was not given the ability to have someone protect her and be partner with her.
Yeah.
So that was just a side note.
No, that's good. So continuing from there, you had that image of the black man being sullied, being damaged, and again, the effeminization of black men. So then after slavery was over, you had black codes, you had Jim Crow, you had lynchings, you had society in general. And it's not just the South, just so everybody knows.
Yeah.
Stuff like this was happening in New York, in Boston. Things like this were happening all the way up the Eastern Seaboard and all throughout the United States at that time. But you had the black men were targeted because they were a threat.
Yeah. Or any instance of black success. If you look at in Tulsa, was it Tulsa?
Oh man, there's all the Tulsa Greenwood bombings.
Yeah. One of the first terrorist attacks on American soil, which is
apart from the ones that we did to the natives.
Yes. Where you had black business owners, black owned banks, you had oil tycoon, all these people and dollars circulating for long periods of time. And it was this image of black prosperity, wasn't just masculine, but it was an image of the black family booming. And as soon as that reached a certain height where it was too much for the dominant culture, it was then removed.
Well, so then you fast forward to our current judicial and social systems. And if you know anyone now that is dealing with, we know that minorities are incarcerated at a higher rate than Caucasians and Anglos.
It's researchable.
It's facts.
Yeah.
It's facts. There's no arguing this. And so they're over-policed. Our communities are over-policed. And a lot of times what happens is if a husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend, if they have a child and the husband, because of, again, minor charges a lot of times are trumped up. We have people that are going to prison for things that white people would only get probation for.
Right.
It's common. Again, there is racial injustice in our system. Again, I still think America is the best system we got for now, but there's a lot to work on.
Yeah.
And so the woman who is left without a provider in the home, she has to go out and provide for herself, right? So then if the husband comes home and say the woman has a part-time job and maybe she's getting some government assistance, the husband comes home, all of a sudden she either loses her assistance or the husband can't come home. She's penalized for the husband being in the household.
Yep.
And so this same system of removing the man as protector, as provider from this family, it's perpetuated.
Yeah.
And that's why we have so many young minorities. And this happens with Latinos, this happens with Asians, but disproportionately African Americans is what this happens to the most. And so this divide between black man and black woman
Yeah.
is something that was manufactured from the beginnings of the United States of America.
Yeah. And so what is crazy is when you create a system where the protector is now almost a threat to the well-being of the family.
Yeah.
Like you can't be, and actually it does drive a wedge because the more distance you put, the more time that's put there, the more time in prison in a way,
Yeah.
the more independent a woman has to become.
That's right.
And for Black women, I just want to say we generally know and culturally understand there's kind of a stereotype of Black women being more assertive. We're considered more intimidating. That's one of my favorite words.
Stronger.
Stronger because we have to be.
Yeah.
But the reason we have to be is because the one we do life with a lot of times is removed beyond our control.
Yeah. A lot of Black women have to be mom and dad.
Yeah. And so, a lot of, that's just a stereotype again. But when you create a system where you've kind of made the protector the threat and you put pressures in place, which almost create this failure to thrive, and then you create solutions for the welfare of the family, which seem feasible and seem for a time to kind of put a Band-Aid on situations.
And seem like they empower the woman to make a decision.
Right. You're actually deceiving her. And so many generations of Black women have been deceived. We know that welfare, which was not created to be a long-term solution, or we understand it wasn't, actually becomes a long-term solution for so many moms. And it becomes the only system that they understand.
Can I just interject quickly?
Please.
Just to bust a myth real quick.
Bust it.
Just so you know, there are more whites on welfare than Blacks. Did you know that?
I had heard that, but I didn't know if it was true.
It is true. And I believe the highest state that receives welfare, I'm not going to quote it.
Don't quote it.
But one of the highest states that receives welfare is majority white, like it's more
That's
white
crazy.
than Black.
That's crazy.
And so the stereotype that we're fed is that Black people are welfare recipients, when in actuality, if you look at the entire United States, there are more white people surviving off of government assistance than Black people.
Now, does that include disability and other things, or
I don't know.
Just welfare?
I didn't divvy that up.
You didn't research it that
I
far.
didn't. Wow. Just don't see
kidding.
the patriarchy. I just think I know.
See, if it was a woman that would have been doing the research, I'm just saying she would have gone all the way. She would have got every detail.
You're right.
She would have really got into it.
I apologize.
It's okay.
I
You're
was
off
wrong.
the hook.
Wait, hold on. Everyone listen. I was wrong. See? That's a man apologizing.
I'm going to save that soundbite. I need that on my phone. Your
just
ringtone.
a quick response whenever something.
Hold on. Was Pastor right? I don't know. Let me see.
I was wrong. Sorry.
So I'm going to jump ahead to another topic that I know is an unpopular opinion.
Okay, go ahead. Might as well. That's what we're doing.
So now you've created this system.
Okay.
Where you've got Black women raising children.
Yeah.
Because, Black women and Black men together, children sometimes happen.
Right.
And you've also got an economical disparity. So you may have a woman whose husband gets incarcerated for a minor offense, but now he's in jail and there's court costs, there's all these things. She can't afford it. She finds out she's pregnant. We've created a system now where it's very easy for her to get rid of the economical issue that she is dealing with, which we have told her is the fetus that's growing inside of her.
Yeah.
We have created a system. And I will say historically, it does go back to this understanding of Margaret Sanger's getting rid of the undesirable in the society. So again, a very elitist Anglo perspective, that there are desirable attributes of people, physical and emotional and mental. And then there are undesirables, and we want to get rid of as many undesirables. It's kind of a way of us encouraging this evolutionary idea of the what is it? What is it called? The best ones win.
Survival of the fittest.
Thank you. It's like the good people get to live, and the other ones die off.
Hunger Games.
Yeah, that one. It's manufactured Hunger Games. So what we have. Is this system where a lot of really wealthy Anglos decided that we want a system that we can kind of encourage society to get rid of undesirables on their own and think that they're empowered to do it. And there's writings, you can read all of this on your own. There's actual writings where they described in very good detail what they wanted to do. And part of that was convincing people who had children with intellectual disabilities and encouraging ways that we could test for these genetic things, and encouraging mothers that you don't want your child growing up like this, right? Oh, it would be so terrible for them. So maybe we should find a way for you to humanely dispose of this cellular growth in your body. Yeah. And so
Which is not what God calls us.
Right.
Go ahead.
So we've then damaged the view of the Imago Dei, which is the sacred inherent value of every life that is created that is human.
That means image of God.
The image of God. And we've fast forward through that, because that was a long time ago, but we had enough support of that idea that we've now convinced enough people in legislation that those of a different race than white, who we've always tried to keep down, are now at a certain level in our society that it's just unmanageable. We can't have this many of them. We can't have them flourishing.
Yeah.
So we now put things in legislation that legalize this.
Yeah.
I will call it undercover genocide
Yeah.
of undesirables, the foremost of which for a good portion of American history have been Black people. And how do you do that? You place clinics in poor neighborhoods,
Yeah.
predominantly Black, Latino, Asian neighborhoods. And you allow for these services to be free or at low cost to these women who already can't afford it because we've already put so many things in their way. And you convince them that having a child is going to be worse for them than trying to raise this child in the environment that we've actually created for you to make a life in. And so, sorry, I was going to say,
Go ahead.
We don't even know really a full number of how many children
does,
are aborted each year. But Black babies, where did I have it? I have this.
It's right here. I think 1/3 is what you wrote down.
Yes, 1/3 of the babies that are aborted are Black. And the question I always have from my feminist friends, who are all about pro-woman, right?
Yeah.
How many of the babies that are Black, how many of the fetuses biologically are female?
Yeah.
And where are their rights?
Yeah.
Who fights for them?
Yeah.
That's a soapbox moment.
No, it's, hey, I'm not finna sit here and argue with you. On continuing on that same idea of Black rights, Black women's rights, and how they are different than white women's rights. I read this article earlier where, I think Beyonce coined a phrase called the missing white woman syndrome. And there's this thing going on in our culture where we have a lot of missing people.
Yeah.
Missing people. This is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Children, women, men, people are just missing.
Yeah. We hear stories, like every now and then we'll see Amber Alert or child missing or person missing, but we don't get conclusions a lot of times.
No, and you know what's crazy is I actually have good friend of our family is missing, has been missing for 2 years now. No idea where he is. But as of this article that I read in 2019, there were 613,000 missing people in the United States. It's a lot of people.
Goodness.
Like that's a good sized city.
Yeah.
Just gone.
Yeah.
Of those missing people, 10% were Black women. Right.
So that's 61,000.
Yeah. So I think it was actually like 64,000 or something like that.
Okay.
Which you would think, okay, that's probably proportionate to the population. No, the population of Black women in the United States is roughly around 7% last time I checked. So that means there's 10% of those missing are Black, yet they only make up 7% of the population. And that's not even including, there's a ton of Native women who are missing, Latina and Asian women. But the Native women, I don't know if you've seen pictures of Native athletes. They have a red hand across their mouth.
I've seen this.
Excuse me.
I've seen this.
That's to stand in solidarity, to speak out against all these women that are missing. But thinking about that, this phrase that Beyonce coined was basically nobody cares if it's not a white woman missing.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like when the white woman's missing, you get all the Amber Alerts, you get all this stuff. But when a Black woman's missing, you may get something mentioned on the news, maybe not. I mean, you see maybe a blip.
Yeah.
But most of the time you don't. And it's not something that's talked about. I bet most people don't even realize there's that many people missing in our country.
I didn't know that. That's a really high number. I did not know that.
And so this concept of equality, racial equality in feminism, like I get the concept. And I think most people, like myself, start off at a surface level. The concept of women should have equal rights with men is awesome.
Yeah.
That is an amazing concept, and I fully support that. But when we start to try to split up homes and families and say, wife, you don't need to live in unity with your husband because he's trying to keep you down. Wait a second. You don't know about our relationship.
You don't understand the dynamic of the cultural history behind the Black family.
Yeah. And so it's just interesting to me, especially a lot of stuff you brought up, I didn't know. And so it's really interesting looking at that whole picture.
Yeah.
And there's so much more we could talk about.
There really is. It's hard to, it's even hard just to have one conversation about feminism. Like you said, there's
so many
all these
realms.
different camps of it.
Yeah.
And really, I've encountered more Christian women who generally have a heart for equality.
Yeah.
Like my
Amen.
sisters who are like, I'm a feminist. I have a hard time with that title. I do not consider myself a feminist because of what I have seen predominantly white feminism do to my people.
Wow.
Like to
Yeah.
to half my people, I should say. But like
to the black half of your people.
but really, like what I see is not. I really don't see it as kingdom.
I got you.
A lot of times, and what we
Yeah.
see, like when Jesus approached women, when Jesus affirmed women,
Yes, and he
it
did.
was not. I mean, of course, it was a different racial understanding even
But
in that
no,
time.
let's even go with that, because the woman at the well in John 4
I
was a
mean-
Samaritan woman.
I
She was a
mean-
minority woman who was considered undesirable. She was a downtrodden woman who did not have a spouse, who would be considered an adulteress at that
Yeah,
time.
who probably should have been on welfare.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Jesus went to her, and she was actually the first person he revealed himself to
Yeah.
as the Messiah.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's the first. She was the first person. She went into the town and said, "I have met someone who told me everything about who I am." You got to. She was the first evangelist, really. I mean, we say John the Baptist, but like she was the first one
Yeah.
from Jesus's mouth
Yeah.
who ran out and recruited people and was
Right.
like, "Listen,
Well, and even looking at the tomb,
yeah,
when the women were instructed
that's right."
to go and tell the men.
Now, listen, all you complementarians.
Oh, I know it's hurting you. It's
but
hurting you real bad.
It's all good. This is just where we stand. You know our tradition.
But
We
we're
love
not,
you still.
Yeah, we're not saying like this isn't something that needs to divide.
No.
This is just a accurate understanding of the history, the story of what happened. Like
Yeah.
this was something that happened, and we can interpret that different ways if we want to. But the reality is that Jesus did value women
He did.
in the cultural context.
That's
He
right.
understood women, and it's not just because of the Virgin Mary. I know we have a whole other sect of Christians.
Don't even get into all that.
It's not because of that. It's because he understood the Imago Dei
That's
resides in men and women together,
Amen.
not separate but equal, not like all of
Yeah.
these different things we attach to it, but in the human being and the human spirit, there is this inherent value.
So we don't really have practical application like we normally do. It's a sort of practical application.
Yeah, there's some of this. Yeah.
I want to start off with this point of compassion. So to my Anglo brothers and sisters, first off, thank you for rocking with us this month, because I know it's probably stretched a lot of you. And
if you've even listened,
if
let's
you've
be
listened,
real.
we got some trolls that don't listen, just say mean things, but it's okay. Listen, if you've rocked with us this whole month,
Yeah.
You've probably heard some things that have been hard and difficult to digest, given your understanding of the way the world works. And so thank you for being here. But listen, compassion, understand that different people have different struggles. Like all women have a common struggle of
Right.
being women. I understand that. However, women of color have a vastly different degree of struggle, at least in mainstream society, than Anglo women. And it's okay for Anglo women to say, "Hey, you're my sister, but I understand that being a Black woman or being a Latino woman or being an Asian woman is more difficult because you have another barrier."
Yeah.
And so have compassion. Don't just try to minimize the things that make us diverse. God blessed us with diversity. He doesn't want us to be like, "Oh, well, that doesn't matter. We're all in it together." No, it does matter
Yeah.
in who you are as a person. And I need to have compassion about that.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't define you completely, because your identity needs to be first and foremost in Christ, but it is valuable. It does
Yes.
matter.
Yeah.
So that's my first one.
That's
What you
good.
got?
Really mine, I had a whole bunch of practical things, but then I was like, we need to continue this podcast and we need to not lose a bunch of listeners. So,
Right. We're going to be on welfare next week because we just lost all of our listeners.
one, practically stop drinking the Kool-Aid. Like,
But I like Kool-Aid.
oh, then you only if it's purple.
No, you
Purple
stop
drink.
that.
Okay.
I actually like blue raspberry. That's my favorite.
See, red was always my favorite.
What flavor is red?
It's red.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
That was a test. If you would have said a flavor, I would have fought you.
No, it's red.
Exactly. All right, go ahead.
So drinking the Kool-Aid, taking what is given to you and just accepting it because everyone else is drinking it. Go deeper than what you're told.
Yeah.
Even what we've told you, like please don't take what we have said as the finite end all be all of
I mean,
everything.
the final. It is finite. There's more to
Yes,
it.
thank you.
Yeah.
Go and research this. We've said names. Research these names for yourself. Go
good.
and find out the truth. If you seek the truth, you will find it. I know that.
right.
I know that to be true for myself.
Amen.
I know that's the way it is. But
Amen.
I will say, like, this is my unpopular thing. Next month is March.
It is.
It's considered Women's History Month.
Okay.
I like how they went ahead and gave us the shortest month.
Wait, are you speaking as a woman or
Okay,
as I'm
look,
just playing?
okay, I'm black first, okay?
I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there.
So, in light of what next month will be, there's a big event that happens. I'm going to say stop marching.
Wow. That's a bold claim.
I know it is, and I know it's unpopular.
Yeah. Why are you saying stop marching?
Okay, well, I'm gonna take this quote from a woman named Rachel Cargill.
Okay.
You need to read up on this woman.
Okay.
I want to be friends with this woman. I want to get to know her. I want to sit at her feet and learn some of the things like from her.
It's kind of odd, but go ahead.
I'm just saying. She said, "At this point, I call the women's marches parades, with white women doing arts and crafts the night before." She continues, "This is an event for them. It wasn't until white women were personally affected that they came out in the millions. All of a sudden, they knew how to organize. Women of color have been marching a long time."
That's interesting.
So,
yeah.
And I look at that and I was like, ooh, a long time. Yeah, we've been marching since we were put in chains.
March
and
onto the
forced
ships.
to march somewhere.
Yeah.
And so I will say, if you are a woman who cares about the dignity of your sisters who don't look like you, and I'm talking about your biological sisters. I'm sorry if that's unpopular. I'm talking about the women who were born women.
I hear you.
If you care about this, look at the Women's March for what it is, what it has trendily become.
Yeah.
Which is just another hashtag. It is just something else to distract us, to almost tout this comical view of womanhood. And I'm sorry, it does not add to the dignity of women of color. It doesn't add to the dignity of women. It's laughable.
Wow.
And it is frustrating as a Black woman to watch this being perpetuated in the culture. Stop marching.
And what I'm hearing from you, just to clarify, I'm not hearing don't support women's rights.
Absolutely not.
And I'm also not hearing don't stand up and support those who are being oppressed,
Absolutely
who are being
not.
murdered, who are being raped.
No.
That we should all continue to fight for their rights.
Absolutely. And fight for them in actual relational, tangible ways.
Yeah.
Beyond one event once a year.
That's good.
Beyond that, go support a business owned by a woman.
Yeah.
Find if you can befriend a woman who you know is an outcast. If you can find these people in your life, in your circle that you interact with on a daily basis. We talk about this all the time. It's not just a Sunday morning thing. It can't just be once a year thing. You have to make this a part of your actual walk. Nobody cares about your feminism if it's just on a sign.
Yeah, that's good. That's a t-shirt. That's a t-shirt right there.
We might be selling that t-shirt next month. We might have to just capitalize on this trend. If they're going to go ahead and use it, so are we.
Hey.
You can't beat them. Join
I'm
them.
just going to say that came from Kylie Joe. I did not say that. But if it does make money, I do support it.
It was a joke. It was a joke. We're not going to do that.
And just for men, support your women. Support the women in your life. Encourage the women to pursue the calling God has for them.
Outwardly support them.
Not just be like, hey, I support you. But then when people are doing things that make lives hard for women, you don't say anything. Stand up and support and protect and encourage the women in your life. And they are called, they are gifted, they are equal, they are brothers, or they are sisters, co-heirs.
We are not brothers.
No, co-heirs with you in Christ. And so understand, they carry the Imago Dei, they carry the image of God. And so just support the women in your life. Awesome. Well, next month we actually have a new partner that I'm pretty excited to talk about. And so next month we're going to be sharing some of what they're doing. But this has been an awesome episode. It's been an awesome month. I don't know what's going on with my words there. But it's we look forward to touching base with you guys. Please share this, subscribe.
Hey, even if you didn't like it, share it and talk about it with your friends.
That's fine. We'll deal with it. We'll deal with the backlash.
That's right. So this has been the Nick Smith Podcast. We hope you've gotten a big old dose,
huge slice
of real life.
No myth.
Be blessed.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Nick Smith Podcast. It's our mission to entertain, educate, and empower our audience through the lens of our real life, no myth. To join us in this mission and to receive exclusive content each week, we invite you to become one of our Patreon supporters by visiting www.patreon.com/NickSmithPodcast. Sign up today. Again, thanks for listening and be blessed.